Thank you. You may be seated. A virtual welcome to Unity Church-Unitarian. It is a place that people have gathered in grief, gladness, and gratitude for over a century. We have gathered today from many places in our singular rooms to celebrate the life of a remarkable man, J.P. Horan-Kimsal. He lived a life of meaning and purpose, and we are here to celebrate his life, the triumph of spirit and love, and to grieve his untimely death. This gathering is a time for us to acknowledge and to affirm the depth of our sorrow. JP's spirit was evident even as his debilitating and disabling disease continued. We had hoped and prayed that we would have more years with him, but alas, his life has come to an end. We are here to find comfort in one another and in our memories, for his life touched ours. We gather to honor the life he lived, the challenges he faced with determination, courage, and a good dose of humor. The love that emanated from his smile and then his eyes and finally his eyebrows. He smiled with his very being, and we gather to make his presence among us as real and as honest as possible, so that we might say a true farewell and send him on his way into the great mystery with our blessing. We gather to declare once more our deep assurance that although death comes for us all, it matters most how we live the life we are given and how we love that life. JP's life mattered, as does each of ours. So it is his life and the manner in which he lived that calls us together on this glorious summer, fallish afternoon. So let us grieve as we will, and yet in our time of grief, let us celebrate this one precious and unique life. In the end, this time belongs to him and all that he loved best in this world. May it be so.
The lone wild bird in lofty flight is still with thee, nor leaves thy sight. And I am thine, I rest in thee. Great Spirit, come and rest in me. The ends of earth are in thy hand, the seas dark, deep, and far off land, and I am thine, I rest in thee. Great Spirit, come and rest in me.
We gather as one community, bound together by loss and grief, to mourn and honor JP's life. In gratitude to be counted among those whose lives he touched. Caden and others in our senior youth program, Tower Club, you have heard me say at church that what makes this ancient sacrament of remembering and celebrating our departed sacred is that grief and gladness, gratitude and love are shared in the embrace of a community who will not let us journey alone. Some things we must know about grief. Voices of wisdom advise us that we bereaved are not alone. We belong to the largest company in all the world, the company of those who have known love and sorrow. When it seems that our sorrow is too great to be borne, let us think of the great family of the heavy-hearted into which our grief has given us now entrance. And inevitably, to feel about us their arms, their sympathies, and their understanding. So we are here to hold one another. We are here to sympathize, and we are here to try to understand. But our faith does not diminish death by attempting to explain it. The mystery and magnitude of death cannot and should not be explained away. There is no ease for the heart to be had from words of reason, and in the very assurance of sorrow's fading, there can be more sorrow. Grief is something to be lived through. It asks to be embraced. It asks to be honored, with a promise that at its core, grief holds an unaccountable gift for us. There are some things that we should know about grief, beginning with this: there is no one right way to grieve. Each of us finds our own way. Yes, grief has its stages, but it moves with its own power, and it resists being bound to following neat and orderly stages. We bargain, we get angry, we fall into denial or numbness. We may find ourselves reaching for the phone, then remember in disbelief that our loved one is gone from us. So grief ebbs and flows, and each of us must find our own way until with time we come to some sense of peace. But grief does not go away. It is not something to get over. Instead, time teaches us to weave each loss into the fabric of our lives, the stories, the memories, the piece of that person's humanity that is our inheritance. And to come to know that to live in hearts we leave behind is not to die. We also need to know that when we lose someone we love, it brings back every other loss we have suffered. And though each of us needs time to grieve alone, we need to return to our circles of friends and family. Just as villagers return to the well to draw water, we need to come together and discover that we are water for one another. And so we come to this moment, to this place, one with another, to remember the people we have loved, unafraid to grieve with our whole heart, to not stop loving them with our whole heart until their values, their spirit, their character, the very best of who they were, lives in our own hearts. And when we do, they remain a living presence forever in our lives. Amen.
Will you now join with me in the responsive reading printed in your order service? We remember him. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember him. In the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember him. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember him. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember him. In the beginning of the year and when When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember him.
So long as we live, he too shall live, for he is now a part of us, as we remember.
Thank you.
And let us join together in silence. And will you pray with me? Holy One, draw near to us in the stillness of this moment. To us, the bereaved, swaying between the pain of what is no more and gratitude for what once was. We, the bereaved, know the silence of grief when the tide goes out and the barren rocks lay exposed, like the ache in our hearts and the tears that fall into the absence where there was once presence. But grant to us also to know the silence of moments suspended, a morning with no rush for anything, the dog burrowing her head against our knees, the tops of trees swaying in the breeze, the silence of gazing upon the vast waters, a kind of stillness when our hearts open to what matters most, when we remember something precious we had forgotten, a silence in which we sit together in a long embrace until we can feel our way into the strength of a deeper communion, another intensity for those who travel through the valley of sorrow. What is sorrow for? Asked a poet. It is a storehouse for wheat, barley, corn, and tears. A storehouse that feeds all the birds of sorrow, so that in the valley of sorrows we may spread our wings. So, Holy One, help us to find ourselves here in this moment, at this storehouse, this service of remembering and celebrating all that JP has sown and nurtured, a harvest of stories and memories, of friendships and kinship, and unfinished acts of living and loving that JP has inspired. Into this storehouse, we bring our grief and gratitude, our compassion and care, and our laughters close to tears. And in so doing, Holy One, help us to step into that larger circle of nourishment and care, that we may be strengthened to live as truly and faithfully with JP gone as he inspired us to do so when he was present. Like the storehouse that feeds all the birds of sorrow, may the harvest of JP's life strengthen and stir us so that in the valley of our sorrow, we may spread our wings. Amen.
I'm going to be reading a poem entitled Perfection Wasted by John Updike. But before I start, this is going to be tough. I'd like you all to think about JP. Who was JP to you? You know, get that picture in your mind. What made JP JP? I'm sure whatever it was, it's making you smile. Now for the poem. And another regrettable thing about death is the ceasing of your own brand of magic, which took a whole life to develop and market. The quips, the witticisms, the slant adjusted to a few, those loved ones nearest the lip of the stage, their soft faces blanched in the footlight glow, their laughter close to tears, their tears confused with their diamond earrings, their warm pooled breath in and out with your heartbeat, their response and your performance twinned. The jokes over the phone, the memories packed in the rapid access file, the whole act. Who will do it again? That's it. No one. Imitators and descendants aren't the same. Perfection wasted. We'll miss you, JP.
I have just said by the poet Mary Oliver. I have just said something ridiculous to you, and in response, your glorious laughter. These are the days. The sun is swimming back to the east, and the light on the water gleams. as never it seems before. I can't remember every spring. I can't remember everything. So many years. Are the morning kisses the sweetest? Are the evenings? Or the in-betweens? All I know is that thank you should appear somewhere. So just in case I can't find the perfect place, thank you. Thank you.
We want to thank all the family, friends, and coworkers who submitted such loving reflections, memories, and appreciations to this collage of love. We are sharing just a few, those that were shared with Laura and Caden, and I hope you will please know that they have copies of everyone's remarks.
This from Jackie, a co-worker at City of St. Paul Public Works Department. I worked with JP briefly, but he taught me a lot in the time we spent together at Public Works. His smile and down-to-earth, easygoing attitude are things I will remember most about him, and the things I will try to channel from him during the trying times here. He always seemed to have a way to make things less stressful.
From a teacher at Centennial High School, Dwayne Carlson. JP was a student in my computer programming class when he attended there. I remember him as an outstanding young man with a great personality and a sense of humor.
And this from Eric, a friend from high school. I have so many cherished memories of all of our adventures. I hope that a smile comes to your face, JP, as you remember the life's journeys we had together, young men in our late teens, early 20s, and our special bond of sharing a birthday together. I think back to so many times, like the haircut you had on the trip through the Alps with me, and our good friend Domé, the Swiss mister, you going to court to change your name, the tennis team, the hours of practice, the frustration you must have felt trying to teach me a drop shot. There are too many memories to list. Know that your compassion and unique soul has left a legacy behind to be proud of.
A family friend from St. Clair, Beth. The memories of us playing hide and seek at church and getting caught throwing snowballs at cars will stay with me always.
This from high school and college friend Dan. I'll never forget learning to drive in driver's ed. Not sure Eklund stood on his head and did a soft shoe for you, but he did hit the brake before you pulled out in front of traffic, luckily. I have to say that I was the better driver. Same could not be said for my athleticism on the tennis court. I proved that even an accomplished tennis player like you could not teach a football player to play tennis. It was so funny because you were so patient, and then finally, after I had long given up, admitted that maybe it wasn't true for me.
From his high school friend, Domé. Last night, I reread our Facebook conversations, and I noticed how often we wrote the line, "Time flies." Yes, time does fly. I remember our trip to France with Ernie. Whenever someone asks me what my favorite vacation trip has been, I remember us playing soccer, gold division champs, Chiefs all the way. We made history. I remember us dreaming about living in New York City together. I remember so many things.
And this from Benno, a former roommate. JP and I were roommates and friends, not in that order. I remember walking onto the U of M campus. It must have been the years of 91, 92, and I saw some graffiti that read, "Toast is yummy." I shared this vital information with JP, and we set to writing a song about it. I think it has 2 lines in it. "Toast is yummy in your tummy." Something like that. In any case, it provided us with many hours of youthful hilarity. Another fond memory was our nightly dinners. Being broke-ass 20-year-olds, this culinary event consisted of one-step fettuccine alfredo brought to us by rice-a-roni, tater tots, and a liter of soda. Our metabolism worked in overdrive then. We would carry our dinner to the living room and watch Star Trek: The Next Generation, all the while making snarky comments. JP was a kind person, and the world is a better place for having had him in it.
From a friend and former roommate, Becca. What I remember most about JP was his laid-back chillness. He was a good roommate and friend. He also will be thought of playing the self-penned "Toast is Yummy," and for his classic dance move, which we dub the Happy Hips Dance.
And this from Amy and Mike, Laura's sister and brother-in-law. JP was gentle and inclusive. He was non-judgmental and easygoing. We especially remember our time with them camping in the snowy mountains. We were minivan chaos, and Laura and JP were welcoming and shared their love of hiking and Wyoming with Jake, their nephew, at a very early age.
From niece Sarah. I was always amazed at Uncle JP's interest and memory of my hockey team. He could recall the names and jersey numbers of players. He also loved to play games, and he would laugh and laugh when we would play family games.
And this from Cousin Heidi. One summer, my family went out west and stopped at Uncle Ed's on our way back to Ontario. 20-year-old JP was there with his Volkswagen Beetle. I was 16 and invited to ride with him and go play Frisbee, which was a new sport for me. I felt so cool with my older cousin.
From Aunt Meta. At age 11, JP spent almost a month with us in our Wisconsin farm in 1982. He was always so respectful, so grateful. One night after watching a movie, he announced, "Let's make onion rings," which they did, and that became a tradition. He always loved life.
And this from Cousin Ann. JP moved to Minnesota and started Centennial Junior High when I was in the 7th grade and he was in the 8th. JP was part of the other couple on my first double date. He watched Fletch with me on repeat. All I can see in my mind is his amble down Sunset after football practice and him saying, after making varsity, that he would quit because he was tired of getting hit all the time.
From father-in-law, Denny. JP was always excited to play a game with others and most happy, win or lose. The last time I spoke with him, as I was saying my last goodbye, his eyes were wide open and he responded, "Definitely."
And this from stepsister Cara. I'll always remember that he had a smile on his face. He always asked about others before talking about himself. He was quick-witted and always had a comeback. He obviously loved his family and was very proud of who Caden was growing up to be.
From stepfather and Gramps, Kent. I began to connect with JP shortly after I met Vicky. We hosted a meal for the kids, and I got a thumbs-up sign from JP as they were leaving. JP always had simple but meaningful way of sharing his thoughts and opinions. He remains one of the most compassionate, caring people I have known.
And this from Uncle Ed. When JP and family moved to Minnesota, my Ann, Gretchen, and Paula got a big brother, and I got a son. Our times together in the Boundary Waters, butchering hogs in Clintonville, cutting wood, playing tennis were always wonderful, and I will always love him.
From Aunt Ruth. Vicki and JP moved to Minnesota when JP was in the 8th grade. I loved his being close to our family because I saw how happy our 3 daughters were when they were together with him. He seemed to fit like an older brother, confident. I also realized how much his Uncle Ed enjoyed his company. JP just brought out the best in us. The best thing I ever saw in him was how well he loved Laura. That respect was so amazing, something that every woman should have. And then when Caden came, I saw the same adoration from Daddy JP. What a blessing he was to all who knew him.
This from Vicki, his mother. He was a very bright boy who knew what he wanted and what he thought of things. When he was not able to start kindergarten because he wasn't quite old enough, JP would ride his bike toward the elementary school at noon, and the neighbors assumed he was in school. He had a gang of friends to play with so that all summer and after school, they were together. The boys would rotate home, play, have lunches, and play their games together. His kindergarten teacher predicted that he was President of the United States material. He thought his mental maturity and leadership were solid. JP was so full of life, so determined to enjoy it, and he loved his older sister. When he was 10 months old, he crawled out of his crib and joined his sister in her bedroom. So no more cribs after that, but 2 beds in one room. He was a deep thinker with profound understandings. I'm just amazed that I was his mother.
And from his son, Caden. My dad was always happy and goofy. This is what I will always keep with me.
And some of Laura's reflection. We loved each other, plain and simple. He is a part of me like my arm or leg or heart. We did everything together. We were rarely apart for much of our life together. We were best friends and confidants. We shared household tasks. We laughed so much. We held hands everywhere, sitting on the couch, watching television, grocery shopping, and we loved our son Caden more than we loved each other, which is saying a lot. JP was loving, affectionate, kind, gentle, patient, goofy, flexible, mellow. He was also stubborn and sometimes overly logical thinker, and was sometimes not the best at gift giving. For example, he once gave me a pocket knife and a pack full of boxers, telling me, pick the one you want and I'll wear the rest. He once brought me a rose very early in our relationship that he had gotten out of a dumpster behind a florist on Hennepin Avenue, and then he told me about it. I was flabbergasted. What the hell? I told him that if dumpster diving was for flowers for his girlfriend, was going to be his study, how to camp, how to go backpacking, portage a canoe, how to manage money. He encouraged me when I was down or stressed about work or grad school, or he wasn't a fixer. He was a listener. And then he would hug me and just say, I'm sorry, baby. He very rarely raised his voice in anger. As he got sick with HD, he was sad and withdrew. He got mad at himself sometimes when his body wouldn't do what he wanted it to do, especially in the beginning stages. JP and I didn't cope with Huntington's as well as we wanted to, But what's true is that we forgave each other over and over and chose love each time. Our love morphed into the simple acts of giving and receiving basic care. He had to surrender into being cared for completely, and I got the honor of loving and caring for him. We were always grateful for each other and so grateful for Caden, who was, is, and will always be our true love. JP loved Caden so much and was so proud of him. He was such a wonderful father in the traditional expected sense until he couldn't be. He was sick for so much of Caden's life, and I know Caden doesn't remember all the good times when JP was fully functioning and not sick. I feel like we could have done a better job of telling Caden stories, showing pictures of the three of us. JP told me he had had a good life, and he had, and he has. He told me once that he just wanted to be a good person. He was. And I can't really wrap my head around him not being here anymore. I'm a better person and always will be because he loved me. And I'm so grateful for the life we shared. There were 28 years of knowing and loving him. Was not long enough for me. Please forgive me for beginning this eulogy, which focuses a bit on my own experience, something that I detest in eulogists. But I want to acknowledge two things: that I didn't know JP very well. I remember when he and Laura first got involved in the congregation. I remember that he had a kind of magnetic and interesting spirit. He was clearly an attentive and present person, and that he was very focused on Laura and then Laura and Caden. I didn't know what took him away from regular attendance. I did know that Laura often came without him or just brought Caden to events. I do remember a loving man full of energy. And the second thing I want to say is that having sat down with some members of his family, sat for some time with Laura and Caden, I want to rail against a disease that took so much from us. JP was a vital and bright person who gave so much, who was so much in this world, perhaps because he could hear the faint ticking of life's clock. He lost a father and a grandfather to this disease. And even after given the diagnosis, he and Laura hoped for a life that was as long as his father, and perhaps, if they were lucky, as long as his grandfather's. So we are here to do today is to witness that all he made of the hand he was dealt, which is the true testimony to his character and to all that he loved and cherished in this life. What is it? I look at Jill as I ask this question. What is it about jumping off garages? What is the enticement that calls to almost every growing child? Is it the hope that for one moment we will defy gravity and fly? Is it that invitation to imagine and possibly create magic? JP and Jill, his first and beloved playmate, were called to climb up over and over again, only to jump and gleefully fall, fall, fall. These early experiences, it could be said, taught him to fall and to find the strength and stability to stand up again, to get up again. To claim joy in the everyday, to risk physically and to excel, to suck the juice out of the fruit of life, this seemed to be JP's task. We know he loved to laugh. We know he loved to play physically and with friends and family. We know that he loved to play games and that it didn't matter win or lose. We also know that he excelled at physical sports as a young man. And yet, as shared with his cousin, he walked away from high school football. Why get hurt over and over again? But his passion for games continued throughout his life, from active participant to viewing fan, screaming for Michigan to win, go blue, and for all the other teams that won his heart. Even when his life began to grow smaller, he still found joy in others' accomplishments, still took pleasure in the joy of the pursuit of excellence, of breaking barriers, of settling scores. He relished the natural world. The rocks present in the chancel today reflect this love of the natural world. He recognized and named everything as holy. He breathed in the air of beauty and became that beauty. And I argue, has become that beauty. He was blessed and blessed in return. Now, I know that he was named after his beloved uncle, Jim, and that he loved his uncle and grieved his passing. But I wonder, Vicki, if you didn't know that actually JP stands for just perfect. Because what I want to testify to this afternoon is what he gave his life to living life to the fullest as long as he could, to focusing on what brought joy to him, those around him, and to others. I want you to know that I have done many eulogies in my professional career, but the love that JP shared with Laura and Caden and his family was an inspiring legacy. After hearing so much about his loving nature, I turned to Caden and said, "This is the best legacy you could wish for." And I believe that is true. That JP over and over again chose love as his guide. I loved the story that once he moved to Minnesota, he would stop in at his cousin's home, Ruth and Ed's place, on his way home to his own home. Now, not that the snacks didn't help in his decision to pretty much stop there every day, but can we imagine that desire for more family as adolescence descended? That his circle kept enlarging and increasing, bringing more and more people in? Not every child, not every teenager could or would do this. He wanted to be family, and he knew how to cultivate that sense of family in those he loved. He loved well. What a fitting legacy for someone whose life was cut short. We have so many examples in today's world where this is the case. And I would argue it is enough. He loved well. He loved well to the end. He loved passionately and completely, and filled his life and the path that he walked. And what he made of this one and precious life was truly remarkable. He lived his life to the fullest for as long as he was able. He excelled in physical activities as well as intellectual and emotional. He seemed to have an inbred emotional intelligence. He noticed. He paid attention. He affirmed those around him and seemed skilled at bringing out the best of those he loved. We will miss him. We will miss his sense of humor, his love of family, his love of life. We will miss his tender and generous heart. We will miss his humor, the ways that he put his whole selves into games. We will miss his words, definitely true. Hey, that, no. We will miss his presence. Unto all things there is a season. There is a time to be born and a time to die, a time to sow and a time to reap, a time to gather in and a time to cast away, a time for love and a time for peace. And we have come, my friends, to the time for peace. We are not and were not meant to live forever. Each life is sacred, and what endures is the spirit with which a person has met life. Though JP's life was compromised by an insidious disease, his shimmering legacy remains. This will not die, but remains through us that carry on. If what a person has done is good, and if what a person says is true, then that goodness and truth do not die, but live on to bless humanity. It is the central message of every religion that which is truly good cannot be destroyed, that the universe ultimately wastes nothing. We all have our shortcomings and our mistakes. Let me assure you, they die with us. But our victories of spirit, JP's life with all of you was his true temple and his true religion. He lived his beliefs and values through his love, and his life came down on the side of a generous and abundant love. As his life is closed prematurely, and we all rail against that fact, we also acknowledge that death is Earth's great and final democracy. So let us keep some essence of his love, his sense of humor, his love of the game, his deep and abiding interest, and hold on to the love that he held for you. And in this world of so much division, fear, and uncertainty, please remember to be kinder, and remember why. And may this inheritance strengthen and bless his memory, as his life has been such a blessing to us. May it be so, and amen.
Below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat. My blue boat home.
Such a blessing that Lindsay and Ahmed and Peter could play this service. We ask everyone to stay seated during the postlude because it is Peter's words that I believe deserve to have the last word and so resonate with who JP really was, that everything was holy. Everything was holy now. So we remember someone who loved this life, who loved the natural world. I encourage you in these days before winter descends that you take a moment to notice the beauty and see him reflected there. See him in the shining stars. See him in the leaves as they blow in the wind. See him in the soaring wings of eagles on the river. See him in the shimmering water before you. May it be so, and amen.
When I was a boy, each week on Sunday we would go to church and pay attention to the priest. He would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything everything is holy now. And when I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two. Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad. Miracles don't happen still. But now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything, everything, everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, it barely wet my fingertips. But now I have to hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down. But I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Everything, everything, everything is holy now. Read a questioning child's face, say it's not a testament. That'd be very hard to say. And see another new morning come, say it's not a testament, a sacrament. I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush, singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then. Everything is holy now. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down. But I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Mm.